pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Present.
Trustee Caprio?
Present.
Trustee Rogers?
Present.
Trustee Sweet?
Present.
Trustee Turkey?
Present.
Trustee Barron?
Present.
Mayor Yurkovich?
Present. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 27th, 2017 Village Board meeting?
So moved.
Trustee Cabrio,
I'll second.
Trustee Sweet. Are there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2018 Village Board meeting?
So moved.
Trustee Gray,
I'll second.
Trustee Trinity. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Schedule of accounts payable. Is there a motion to approve the accounts payable for the period of December 29th, 2017 to January 25th, 2018?
So moved.
Trustee Gray,
I'll second.
Trustee Trichy. Discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to ask that one invoice be removed from the schedule. It is the Homer Township Administration for the invoice for Homer Harvest Days 2017. I just received some word from Finance Director Sawyer today, and it didn't have all of the breakdown of it, and I'd like a little more time to look into that and see how it breaks up.
Absolutely. Anyone else have a issue with it? Okay.
You can show that as motion.
All right.
Do I need to rescind my motion or just amend it?
Amend it.
I'd like to amend my motion to remove the invoice for Homer Township Administration for the Homer Harvest Days invoice in the amount of $9,197.36.
100.
Okay. Trustee Trichy, you have to, okay. You're good?
Yeah.
All right. So any other discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Turkey?
Aye.
Trustee Barron?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Reports and communications from other officers. I'll start it off. I'd like to thank everyone who attended the stakeholder forum on Wednesday, January 17th. Thank you to all those that participated. Your input is a crucial aspect of the village's strategic planning. We hope that you found the forum informative and worthwhile. The information that we gathered from the forum will greatly assist us as we continue to work towards our strategic plan for the community. We'll go to the trustees. We'll start with Trustee Gray.
No reports, Mayor.
Okay. Trustee Tracey.
I'll touch more about my Parks Committee when we get to the workshop.
Okay. Trustee Burrian.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Rogers.
No report.
Thank you. Trustee Sweet.
No report this evening.
Thank you, Trustee Campbell.
Only that as we hope the weather gets warmer, don't forget we still have Homer Fest coming up on Thursday, June 21st through Sunday, June 24th. Same southwest location in front of the Highway Department, so we look forward to entertaining you all and having a good time out there again this year.
Thank you. Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have the Treasurer's Report of Cash and Investments at December 31st, 2017. It's the 8th month of fiscal 2018. Shows the general fund with a balance of $5,558,586.06. The special event fund had a balance of $64,022.18. The environment fund had a balance of $78,598.89. Motor fuel tax fund had a balance of $2,482,377.99. The park and recreation fund had a balance of $3,400,123.10. The debt service fund had a balance of $1,767,398.81. And the capital project fund had a balance of $1,083,740. The EAB tree replacement fund had a balance of $353,895.82. And the last fund, the capital project bond fund, had a balance of $14,468,552.04 for grand total all funds $29,257,294.89. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyers. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Village clerk.
No report.
Village attorney.
No report, Your Honor.
Public safety officials.
No report.
And the village manager.
No report, Mayor.
Okay. Next is public comment. If you could keep it to 3 minutes, we appreciate it. See if we have anyone who's going to talk. That's two. First one's going to be Robert Cutt. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm here about the tower that they're proposing on Parker Road. I have the property just south of that. I've been here for 41 years since I built my house. And the science isn't out on those towers, they're good or bad for people. According to the FCC, it's safe. According to university studies, which I can find a lot of, it's not safe. So, science to me is out. And the other thing is, who monitors it? If it exceeds its limits, there's no, that I know of, no regular system for doing that. And then they want to put the tower there and they want to add more companies to it, which is going to raise the volume, which faces my bedroom. I mean, those RF, and I know a little bit about that because I was in the Army, I dealt with that. It'd be pouring right into my bedrooms. It's going to be unsightly. The trees, that used to be where it's at, excuse me again, used to be a Christmas tree farm. But those trees are all aged and they're being depleted by nature, by age. And you'll be able to see that thing pretty good. And property values. My property value is obviously going to go down because according to Google, if you can believe anything you find there, 94% of the people who are looking at a house wouldn't want that thing next door to them. Okay? I'm not an authority in any of this, so I'm just following what I could dig out here. The trees on my property, and I took great pains when I put my property in to stay away from all the old trees. There's probably between my property and the property east of me, next to the power line, probably got up maybe 100-year-old oak trees. And again, the science says they absorb those RF energy from the towers, which put off like magnetic RF energy, and the RF energy would come from something. So it'd speed up their decay. That's what they're saying. Fire station is much higher than my property over on Bell Road. Seems like they could arc out and they could get the revenue opposed to the neighbor. It seems to me that'd be a better place, and they could also add some of their equipment, their radio equipment, to that tower. Since our property values will be depreciated by everything I can find out, will our taxes also be depreciated? Because I don't take any A1 agriculture because all I have is trees. I don't raise anything, so I can't take any farm deductions. Does this mean that the area is going to be depleted? It's kind of unique. Like I said, when I built here, I canvassed for the library, I canvassed for the open space, I canvassed to help with other people create a town so we wouldn't get paved over. I didn't think I'd live long enough to see it happen, and this may be the first step. I mean, if they're gonna take the A1 properties and pave them over, what's the point of creating a village and keeping the tree emblem the way, you know, a lot of us thought in the beginning? Thank you for your time. That's all I have to say.
You're welcome, Mr. Pepper. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just go with Alan, because I don't know how to say the last name.
You know what, Mayor, I'm actually speaking on behalf of PI Tower, so if anyone else would want to speak prior to me, they can.
That would be fine. Andrea?
I'm Andrea Coiter, and I've been a resident here for 46 years. We came in when it was Homer Township. Those 46 years, 39 years, I drove a school bus for Homer School District. So, yeah, I've seen changes, a lot of changes. I've saw the subdivisions coming in one by one, new schools going up to accommodate the kids. A few years ago, I guess we looked like this really plump piece of fruit because Lockport decided they wanted a piece of us. We fought back. Sure, they got a little bit, but we fought back and became the village of Homer Glen because we want to control what goes on in our area. We don't want people coming in from other communities telling us what to do. We want to control that. The property that they're looking to put the cell phone tower is next door to me. They already run a business out of there. They have a stable where they rent stalls out for horses. They keep trailers up there, sometimes extra cars. There's other animals up in there. Occasionally, we get a horse running loose in our yard. Up until Christmas, I had a flip phone. I don't know, a lot of you might not even know what that is. But it was a Verizon flip phone, and I got good service. In my house, outside, anywhere I went, I got good service. Unfortunately, at Christmas, the kids decided I needed an upgrade, and now I got an iPhone. Well, learning to use it's been interesting, but I'm getting there. But I do get calls in. I get calls out. I get texts in and out. Photos I get. My service is great without a cell phone next to me. Is there any written proof, anything in writing that shows that this company has looked into other areas rather than our residential rural area? We're residential. We might be rural, but we are residential. Just, we have a little bit bigger lots. We're not in a confined area, a subdivision. I'd like to know in writing where else they have tried. Have they approached the forest preserve? Have they approached maybe a commercial property? East of us, there's plenty of open land. It's a huge farm where they're not close to subdivisions. Why can't it be looked out that way? We already have three, well, Parker Road already has on 159, and Parker there's 3. On another, at 6 in Parker, there's another cell phone tower. Are we going to rename Parker Road Cell Phone Tower Lane? Just because we're rural does not mean we're not a part of Homer Glen. You're all sitting here. Would you want it in your backyard? Would you want your neighbor to do that to you? Lower the value of our property? Something ugly for us to look at? I enjoy having the deer come in the yard. Occasionally, we even get a coyote or two. But that's what makes Homer Glen so unique. Community and nature and harmony. Think about that. Think if any of you would want that in your backyard or next door to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrea. Next will be Tom Stevens.
I'm Tom Stevens. My wife Kathy and I moved to Homer Glen a few years ago, but we largely because we like the residential rural character of the neighborhood. It's a beautiful place to live, and I hate to see that impaired. The proposing company did show some photo mock-ups what it would look like from Chicago Bloomington Trail out near where the power lines cross. At least when the trees are fully leafed out, wasn't too obvious, but I think our property being closer to the tower, it would be a visual impairment, especially when there's no leaves. But in any case, it's uncertain what the thing's going to look like. It's also uncertain what the benefits are really going to be. Our cell coverage is adequate. I'm not a Verizon subscriber, so I don't know what the benefits would this be, depending on who adds their equipment to the tower. It looked like from the maps, the benefit would largely be in the Messenger Woods area. And again, the impacts are uncertain not only from this project, but from follow-on projects. If we let this one happen here in a residential area, will there be another tower in a few years? Will this tower need to be built higher? It's always easy to put in the next one. It's hard to say no to the first one. It's easier to say no to the first one, harder to say no to the follow-up projects. We don't know what those follow-up proposals might be. So the benefits are uncertain. The impacts, I think, are significant, but we don't know exactly what those are. I urge you to not approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Alan, that was the last one, but you want to wait until we bring this up? Because you're going to get some questions. Okay. Done with public comment for now? Somewhere in the legislation. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 18-001, an ordinance granting a variance to reduce the required front yard setback for the properties located in the R4 single-family residential district from 30 feet to 25 feet? Final plat for Crystal Creek Estate subdivision dated December 15, 2003. For certain real properties located at 12245 and 12251 West Carroll Drive in Homer Glen, Illinois. O'Malley Builders, Inc., case number HG 1801B.
So moved.
That was Trustee Brennan. Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Trustee Trudke, discussion.
Well, Mayor, in talking to Director Gotti this afternoon, I just wanted to make sure, on page 3, where it talks about the different chapters for conservation, tree preservation, water resources, you were going to look into that to tighten up the wording, not to tighten up, but to clarify the wording a little bit more better for the, okay. I just want to make sure and have that recorded, that's what was going to happen. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers? Aye. Trustee Sweet? Aye. Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Nancy Trudke?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to refer this case back to the Planning Commission after the applicant submits findings on alternate sites to ensure the Planning Commission's recommendation is based on substantial and complete evidence from the applicant as well as the village's public safety entities, PI Tower Development, LLC, case number HG 1727 Ms. J.
So moved.
Mr. Gabriel,
Second.
Trustee Rogers, discussion.
Well, this was brought up with public safety. I think what had happened was there was just an error on somewhere there was a lack of communication, and public safety wasn't made aware that this was on the agenda. And they, just when I had a chance to have their voice be heard, and talking to two of the planning committee members, they had a lot of questions that at the time the applicant wasn't able to answer because they didn't bring that information with them. They weren't notified ahead of time that this is the type of questions that you can expect. So I think just out of respect for our public safety community, we owe it for them to just at least be able to voice their concerns and be heard. And out of respect for the planning committee, they had a lot of unanswered questions that the applicant can address once he's had time to go through all of those. Some of the questions that the woman in the audience had are really great questions, very valid questions. And the cell tower company will address those, I'm assuming, but didn't know that that was the type of information that they should have brought forth when they came. We're not voting on this today. We're not saying we approve this. We're not saying we don't approve this. We're saying, should we send it back to planning so that all parties can be heard who want to be heard?
Any other comments?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the motion to consider, and I wanted to repeat that, says, is there a motion to refer this case back to the Plan Commission after the applicant submits findings on alternate sites? So we refer that back, and so that's what you're going to do.
Right, yes, Verizon RF engineers, they're reviewing 4 towers that were brought up at the Plan Commission meeting. There are 4 towers in question, 2 to the northwest a little, and I think 2 to the west. So Verizon RF engineers are reviewing those sites, see if they would and could possibly provide the coverage for the objective area search ring. Yeah.
Right, and if that's not the case, are they looking into, because this is a pristine residential area. If you can see from our sheets, the trees, I mean, it's fully, that whole area is heavily wooded. And this village has lost over almost 20% of our tree canopy to even just the ash borer, not alone storm damage, construction, etc. So to go and blatantly put a 20-foot wide path or road into this area and then a concrete slab that's 100 foot by 100 foot, that's unheard of. And especially the height, that's like the height of the Ferris wheel at Navy Pier before they even increased it. I mean, I think that's an issue. There's also some land, have you checked with the fire department? They do have some land along Parker Road, which is not wooded, it's open field. I mean, maybe check there too.
Yeah, we could look into that property as well. I don't know if that property was mentioned at the Plan Commission.
No, it wasn't.
Where's that property at?
It's sold.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
If you're talking about the corner where the stop sign
The
is?
northwest corner? Yes.
Yes.
That just got sold.
Well, it's still.
I mean, you never
It's
know.
sold.
I mean, it's.
I know the owners work with them.
Okay. But I mean, there might be some other fields other than being so close to residential and a heavily wooded area.
Sure. We have scoured the area. We've done quite a bit of research to find a candidate. We approached the ComEd towers to the east. The entire line of ComEd towers, the old transmission line, is not adequate to support a co-location. So, you know, we've done our research and came up with the best candidate in the agricultural parcel. We meet all setbacks. we exceed all setbacks and we're within the allowed height. But we would ask the village board amend us back to the plan commission so we can allow our Verizon's RF engineers to supply the documentation for those other towers to see if they could meet the objective as well.
And check out alternate sites, not just the easiest target.
Well, it's not necessarily the easiest. I mean, we have researched the area. We went to some unincorporated parts of Will County. We try. We do our best. First, foremost, co-locations. Second would be the unincorporated farm parcels, and when you reach out and you don't get positive feedback from property owners and so forth, then you kind of narrow the search, and you enter into discussion with property owners that are willing. And brought up was the fire department. That was mentioned after the meeting that, like you mentioned, they would like to speak about the tower because I think they're in support of the application. They'd like to testify, so we would ask that the board remand us back to the plan commission.
Okay.
I just have a curiosity question, sorry. What is the radius that one of those towers cover?
I think...
If you don't know, just a guess.
I don't know for sure. We do have maps, and I can measure the radius, maybe a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, something like that.
Only because I saw the map with the 26 or so on there, and they seem like they're fairly close, but then again, it's a small map.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to verify that if we do send this back to the plan commission, this will trigger the public hearing process again, and neighbors and those impacted will be notified, as well as there will be notifications on the website about the meetings and things like that.
Yes, the neighbors will be re-notified. Right now, we're looking at the March 1st Plan Commission meeting.
All right, you have a question or for me?
I'd like a little addendum, if I can, just for 1 second. This was turned down once before, further down in Parker, for some reason. Those neighbors didn't want it, and they rejected it there. I don't know how many people this thing can serve, because there's not that many people in that area. I mean, they'd have to put out a lot of power to reach out to expanded areas. It's a very small, there's very few homes. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Carter, that one, when they go to the planning commission, those are the questions that will be asked of them.
We did that all right, sir.
Well, this will be a little bit more in depth.
And I would also just recommend that you email your questions so that we make sure that the tower company gets them and they're asked and answered, so that there's no more excuses. We didn't understand the questions that were going to be posed to us. So if you could email your questions, specific questions, like Carlo had a specific question on the radius, and he didn't know the answer. Well, we're going to expect you to know those kind of answers. So if you can email your questions to BJ, then they can.
The thing is, we're put in this position. We're defending our property. Okay.
I understand.
By whom? By an outside contractor? I was a contractor for 40 years. It's all about money. It always is.
And again, we're not here to decide on that at all. We're just making sure
Well, yeah, but these poor
that
people.
everybody's treated fairly. That's all. And obviously, we're taking you all into consideration as well, because we know that you have unanswered questions that you want answered.
Well, all you have to do is go on Google to see, what the different effects of it are. I mean, my property value is going to be dropped. My tax is going to be dropped. I mean, this is just a punch in the gut for me. I mean, I didn't do anything to deserve this.
We understand that, but
Right.
these things are going to be brought before the planning commission, questions will be asked, and then they have to have the answer for.
Thank you. I don't mean to be, I'm sorry.
I don't disagree with you. I don't think it belongs. It doesn't belong on residential property. It belongs on business property.
Keep the
But-
carnivores closed.
But we still have to do it the way it's supposed to be done.
Thank you.
BJ, what time is the planning commission meeting on?
7 p.m., March 1st.
George,
Yeah, but
I would like
them to come back with a more definitive answer about why Commonwealth Edison said no. It kind of was a brush-off answer in the Plan Commission. I want a real answer that looked at every proof that it can't be put on a Commonwealth Edison tower.
Well, like Trustee Rogers said, if everyone gets their questions together, gets them into us, this way we can get them to them, and they can all be addressed. Make it a lot easier on you, so you don't have to run back and forth here. Make it a lot easier on them, so they don't have to run back and forth. But very good questions, and those are the answers that we're looking for.
I think just one more thing, it's important for you all to emphasize that this isn't just cell phones. I think there's more to it. I'm not for or against it, whatever it might be. You got to emphasize what the need of this tower is.
Right.
I don't know if that was done in the first Plan Commission. I think it's important.
I think the fire department and public safety will address and everything. Their concerns don't have to do with the phone, the iPhone. It has to do with.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Mayor, it seems to me there's more questions than answers, and particularly from members of the Plan Commission still. And so I think that's the prudent move. And I think I'm particularly sensitive to the public safety weighing in officially on this. But I have to say, it seems that this is a second meeting in which there are, I think Trustee Caprio's question is a pretty basic question, right, when we're talking about cell tower coverage. And so it doesn't seem to me that after 2 meetings, including tonight, that you all are fully prepared to answer these questions. And if we send this back to Planning Commission and those are not answered, that's going to be incumbent upon you, because to me that's a pretty simple question that didn't have an answer here tonight. And I know there's frustration from the Planning Commission on similar things. So I'm in favor of kicking it back, but particularly for public safety to weigh in.
Okay. Any other questions? We don't need to. We need to call. All right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Barry?
Aye.
Trustee Nancy
Aye.
Motion carries. So you'll be notified from the village of the dates for the Planning Commission, and then we just have to get some questions together from the residents, from the Planning Commission, whoever else wants to make an opinion on this.
So actually, in this case, the applicant is supposed to notify within 1,000 feet, which he's going to repeat that process again, right?
All right.
And Mayor, it should be reiterated about looking, not just hitting that location.
Well, that's not something
Not
that
a residential.
we have to make sure that we put all every question you can before. So this way, when it goes to the Planning Commission, you have an educated idea of what's going on with it, if it's good or not. Okay?
Are you saying that these objections aren't enough?
I mean, I understand the situation you're in.
Well,
Like I said before.
Can I put a mobile home park there now? Can I just put anything I want? Or are we going to change it to just blow the place apart? For money? I protected it as best I could for all these years.
I understand. You got to put it before the Planning Commission. That's the way everything's done. Next, Mayor's appointment of Trustee Keith Gray as co-chairperson of the Public Services and Safety Committee. Is there a motion to approve the Mayor's appointment of Trustee Keith Gray as co-chairperson of the Village's Public Services and Safety Committee?
Second.
Okay, so Christine first, Carlos second. Discussion.
At public safety, we all agreed that we felt that Trustee Gray would be a great asset to bring on to the committee, and we look forward to having him there.
Me too.
Thank you.
It gives all of us a chance to learn everything about the village that we possibly can. So, and I thank you for accepting that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Nancy
Aye.
Trustee Barry?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
And Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a letter designating the Chicago Southland Convention and Visitors Bureau as the Village of Homer Glen's Convention and Visitors Bureau's agency of record?
So moved.
Trustee Drake.
I'll second.
Trustee Cabrio, discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Spees?
Aye.
Trustee Nestor-Chirky?
Aye.
Trustee Wiedemann?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries. Workshop items. The workshop discussion to seek direction in planning the 2018 Christmas tree lighting and 2018 holiday festivities. There is no motion being requested on today's workshop. It is for purposes of discussion only. So, Trustee Gray, you initiated this, and very happy that you did, because we need to make it better than what it has been.
Right, I had seen that in the minutes of the A&F committee meeting that it was discussed about the tree lighting ceremony and how it's been getting bigger as well as better received, and that maybe we should look into either setting up a separate committee for that. And my initial reaction to that was that Heritage Park going forward is going to be the place of a lot of different community events, and maybe looking beyond just the tree lighting ceremony and saying, as I had said at our last meeting, June's going to be here before we know how we're going to open the park. Once we kind of kick open all the final amenities, certainly won't be there, but we'll have access to the park and people can start using it and seeing what the vision is for the future. So I think we should probably start talking about what do we want to do in June to kick it off, what do we want to do at the end of the year for the tree lighting, how do we want to try to make that better, bigger, more inclusive, and what do we want to try and do in between those. So, I know I have some ideas. I think through our last couple of roundtable committee of the whole meetings, we'd all expressed a lot of interest and a lot of ideas about what to do with Heritage Park. So that was why I wanted to ask for this specific workshop item. And then beyond that, after Trustee Rogers and I talked, and I know this is the next piece of it, but it's also, like I said, June will be here before we know it, and we should be thinking about what to do for the next phase. We get that all rolling. So if we want to start with the events portion of it, the Christmas tree, the tree lighting ceremony was a lot of fun, but there were some definite drawbacks to it. Some people didn't know where Santa was coming in. They kind of, it was a little disjointed. So I guess it really kind of comes down to how does everybody feel about making a separate committee, or keeping this with parks, keeping it with.
Well, we did have a Parks meeting on this past Monday, and the Parks Committee had a consensus of they're willing to sort of take on those events to start. They weren't really too keen on hiring additional people to start doing different events and paying for it. They kind of want to roll with it slowly and take on one event at a time and see where it kind of goes. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right, because we talked to Parks and they said, for now, they would like to have it stay there. I don't think we're going to be spread too thin if we do another committee with staff being involved as well. So, and I don't think June is, we never talked about a June opening of the park. I think it's going to be further down the line. We're scheduling a grand opening for Goodings Grove in mid-July. And I think in June, we're not even going there for a grand opening. It's going to have to be later than that. So that's what they felt. They felt like they can, we'll see how we'll start working on this Christmas tree lighting event, because now all of a sudden, I wish I would have had all this information at the Parks meeting, because if they would have saw it.
I just want to clarify though, the Parks Committee, they didn't have a consensus on when the opening of the park is, or June. That wasn't a consensus. The only consensus the park had was we were open to, starting with the park committee, maybe forming a second committee of the parks, kind of like have a parks committee meeting, and then right after we would have a committee meeting, depending on what the upcoming events were. So maybe we can meet with who was planning before Sue Stein and kind of incorporate her in the events and kind of learn from her what she did, what to do, what not to do, and then kind of move forward and make it bigger and better every year. And then make decisions down the road. Do we look at maybe a separate committee or a separate
person doing it.
Well, you know, in the Parade and Festival Committee, we created a sub-task force committee for
Right, something.
2019 and beyond, so that might be a good idea. I mean, it is a special event, being Christmas lighting and all that stuff, but
The Parks never took on this tree, right? This was all run by staff. You guys are, so I think that's probably the first step is to get Parks involved to work with staff as part of Parks and Rec Committee.
We don't, yeah, right. But it was all on Sue's lap.
Right, that's what I'm just trying to clarify.
Sure.
Keep that sure.
Right, and when I mentioned June, Trustee Sweets, I was only saying that that's basically when Austin Tyler is turning back the property to us, and giving us access to it. So we can throw off the fencing on either side and tell the community that, you know, you can come and use the park. Right, so I, you know, what do we want to do in June as far as at least just showing people what has been done? I wasn't necessarily thinking of the grand opening, but, you know, that's what we're discussing, so.
Well, that's something that, you know, we will bring up at our next Parks meeting as well.
We just leave the grand off right now.
yeah, just soft.
Soft.
Well, because we have so much more to do.
Absolutely.
But you want them to be able to come in and see what we have done so far, because it's a huge endeavor that they've taken on. They're doing very well, and by that time you can actually go in and use it. Right now you can't. So we agree, and this is going to take a couple of years. Hopefully we're done in just a couple of years, but we're working on it. We have a company that's coming in that's going to help us get some ideas of what to do, approximate ideas of some costs, so we know what we're going to be coming up with at the end of the day to pay for this. We want this done as quickly as we can, but we also have to do it with keeping in mind costs and what everyone does.
As far as the events committee portion of the Parks and Rec Committee, I'm not sure what authority they have to spend money, or we should probably start saying, you know, we want to assign some money to these things as well, you know, so there's not a scraping together or constantly going back to the same well trying to get donors to do, or donations from the same, you know, pool of people that we're always asking for Homer Fest and EDAD and Homer Harvest Days and things like that. So
I think the committee would throw suggestions and kind of come up with like, sort of like what this is here.
Okay.
And then the board would have to approve those expenses, is what I would assume.
You would probably want to establish a line item budget as part of the Parks Committee. This past year, we spent about $1,500, not counting volunteer time and staff time. So it really depends on what ideas come out of that, and so we would need to budget extra money if we look at creating extra amenities for that type of event. And then obviously work on the labor and the volunteer network for that.
I think it's needed. I think it's part of a larger discussion. But yeah, I was at the tree lighting, brought my kids. I thought the interior portion of the event was a nice event. I think at some point, and these are the bigger discussions we're going to have, is if we had better attendance. We've outgrown this already. We had another 50 or 60 people, and I'm not sure we could have done it. And so I think this is part of that process of us starting to think ahead and think as this town grows. I think the outside portion, I think certainly left something to be desired. I think that's something that we absolutely need to improve on. We had people standing in landscaping, and you know, and I know this is all temporary as part of the development of this park, and maybe that tree is not in an optimal place for what we're eventually going to do. So part of this is growing pains, and I understand that. But that exterior portion of that event wasn't something that I would encourage, you know, friends to make sure they make, right? That's what I think our goal is here. So that's not a knock. That's saying we're growing and we're getting better. And as we bring this facility online, there are going to be expenses that come with that. And that's part of running a town. And that's part of starting to provide amenities and programming and things like that. And so where I'm not opposed to maybe this year looking at a subcommittee to do that event, I think it's just putting off the inevitable, and the inevitable is something that I would like to see happen sooner rather than later, which is we're, as I said, we're a growing town, and we're going to need to, you know, I don't think you can bring a 100-acre park or an 80-acre park online and think you're going to maintain the same staffing level. I just don't think that's feasible. And so as we start bringing some of these things online, and certainly we can get into that on the next discussion point with Heritage Park, but as we start bringing some of these things online, I think as much as we try to be, as we talk about, a really efficient town with resources, sometimes we resource ourselves into things like that tree light, right? Which is part of the growing pains. And so I think we need to, in addition to just the tree lighting, and committee it this year. And these are things that haven't been just discussed just with this event this year, right? There have been efforts to engage other groups and try to make this a bigger, better event. Because in my opinion, even what we've had right now is the beginnings of what that can ultimately be, right? That's not we should be outgrowing this one. That's a good problem to have. And with that problem in a town of 25,000, there's going to come expenses. And that's part of the game. And so in addition to this, where I'm okay with the committee, I think as a board, we need to start having active discussions about additional staff to help with the programming. On Heritage Park, as you bring that online, you start bringing some of these amenities online, to think we're just going to do that internally with the staff we have. And so I think I'm not talking 3 to 5 years in the future. I'm talking about as we bring amenities on, my view on this is you can put things out there, but unless you're providing the programming and helping organize it, it's never going to be what it can be. And so I just think the tree lighting is one topic. I think it's a bigger topic than just that. And I think we need to start that discussion now about looking and identifying people. So when we have the active rec and the community gathering spot and the potential of the concerts in the park and the movies in the park, we have someone that is a year ahead process of starting to plan those things out. Carl, you know that.
That's all special events.
Right? And so I don't know that you can committee that and rely on volunteers and make this, right, putting out the amenities is one thing, actually making it work and provide the programming and some of the organized things that we have to do because we don't have the typical park district. We don't even have a park department, right, like most towns that don't have a park district have. Those are the things we need to get ahead of now and start thinking about now. And I'm not saying you need to hire somebody tomorrow, but I think as we roll into the discussion about Heritage Park, I think there's going to be a need to have a serious conversation about adding additional, and I'm not talking 5, 10 staff here, I'm talking, in an optimal, one person that has lots of experience on recreational programming, things like that, that we're going to need. And I think that discussion in my world, we're looking at somebody, hopefully, if as I look at Heritage Park and what I'd like to see a timeline on Heritage Park, we're looking at that and starting to identify that person this fall. And so my hope would be we have someone online, in addition to Sue, to be able to help with things like this and going forward and staying ahead of things, not playing catch up.
I'd just like to add to that, because I agree with everything Trustee Varian said, and as well as, Heritage Park is obviously the biggest park we have. It's the biggest, jewel in our crown, but we have all the rest of our parks too. So that person, I think, should be tasked with, making community events in other parks as well as, we need to figure out, and again, I think, what I've been calling out all along, and Trustee Varian said, a parks department, and it comes with an annual program, something that we can look at and say, there are certain things that are going to happen every year, tree lightings and, whatever else, whatever those 6 core things that you do every year and every community does every year essentially. And then there will be other things too that are scattered around the village, and there will be, hit or miss things that come and go. And, but yeah, you're right, it has to be some sort of much bigger, much more holistic look at all of our parks, and how they can interact and how we can engage the community as well.
Yeah, and I agree with you as well. You got to remember, this is going to be our main venue at this point. So someone has to take the bull by the horns on this thing.
I agree with everything everyone's saying, but we don't even, it still looks partially like a golf course, right? We have to get through first steps too. We started off talking about Christmas tree lighting, which the Parks Committee is volunteering to take by the horns and start just with that portion. We don't even have a calendar of events yet. I don't even know what's going out there, let alone what events we're gonna plan out there. I think we should start with the tree lighting and then plan what the park is and then plan the events. I mean, it's usually how things go. I mean, I think it's great that we're looking out there to plan events in the future. I mean, I run Conos Farm, I do it every day for my life. I think it's crazy, one person doing it all the time. I get it, but I don't think we're exactly there yet. And I know you're not looking at hiring 1, 2, 10 people tomorrow, but in the future, we're going to have someone kind of directing whatever it is we're putting out there, depending on what it is.
I agree with you. I think we just need to start thinking big, because if we don't, it's just like, I wouldn't, as a parade and festival committee, want to be in charge of concerts in the park. Two totally different venues. And to me, parks, at some point, should be in charge of the events that happen on this park, in my mind. That's just how I feel.
I think the park committee should have a say, should
Sure.
have some involvement.
Sure.
And just like the events committee should maybe might have, and the EMA committee might have some say, and the finance committee. Everyone's gonna have a little piece of it. It shouldn't be dedicated to one, but I think just to before we figure out what's going on with this park, there's Christmas tree lightings, we're happy to help.
Bottom line.
Bottom line, we're happy to get Santa out there and make some kids happy.
I hope that wasn't lost in what I said.
We're good with it. Appreciated.
Right?
Yeah,
we're-
I think a little lost, but I mean, I think just want to like get back to like, yeah, we're willing to do it just to get us started until we find out what we're doing. Once we find out what we're doing, then let's.
But then the other part of it too is, what you said, Trustee Kemper, about thinking big. Let's just think about how we're paying for it. Right? So just, that's what I'm saying, we don't want to get over our skis. We want to make sure that we do get everything done that we're looking to get done, but we also have to make sure we've got the finance to do it. And get it done as fast as we can.
Do we have a consensus on that? Or
Oh, I would say so.
that's the item we're on right now.
Yeah, I would, well, that I think is probably the one that we should concentrate on right now, because they are going to be doing a lot of movement of the dirt out there. Retention, the water retention set, and we still have some things to do farther back. So a lot of we'll be talking Tree about this, but we got to make sure that everything that we are doing, we're doing as we should.
Yeah, I
in order,
think that's
because
part
we
of,
don't want to.
I think that's part of the second discussion.
We don't want to rip up something, so, but yeah, we got the consensus for Christmas right now, and we'll see what we can add into it. I mean, it doesn't mean we can't look into something, because that's how we're going to find out what everything's going to cost. So like our main concentration right now is Christmas.
With Sue Simon's assistance and so.
Right.
Yeah.
No doubt. So the consensus is yes?
Yes.
Okay. Second is discussion regarding Heritage Phase 2. This workshop discussion is to seek direction on the Phase 2 development of the above-ground amenities and the approved concept plans, and specifically to seek input on architectural design services for the desired amenities. This discussion would assist staff as we prepare options for the proposed 2018-19 village budget. There is no motion being requested on tonight's workshop. It is for the purposes of discussion only. So do you want to hold it up, or do you want to just discuss it?
I guess, I think what would be important to set the tone before we talk Phase 2 is maybe an update from staff on Phase 1, right? Where we're at in that process. I think there's more activity out there than most people imagine, because it's you can't build a house till you have a foundation. It's the foundational work that's being done out there, and it's lots of underground utilities and all those things that aren't sexy, but that's a Phase 1, and that's a big expenditure. And so maybe if we can just go through Phase 1 of where we're at.
And who's going to do that?
Here.
Do you want to take a minute?
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that.
Jump in.
Right now, we're probably about 48% complete with construction out there now. The primary facilities that are being constructed are, for one thing, is the Heritage Circle, which is basically going to provide access. There's also going to be parking along that road. They're in the process of constructing. It's approximately about a mile-long bike trail as well through the property. It'll work its way towards the back of the property and then come forward. They've installed sanitary sewer and water main, which will ultimately service a potential future splash pad. They've also installed the conduit that'll be used for the electric service for both the street lights and then any other amenities that will be constructed out there in the next phases. And there's going to be a central location at the utility structure that both the water meter and the water service is going to, and then the electric service, and then that way it'll branch out into the various locations. They've also done some mass grading, quite a bit of mass grading out there to support, obviously, the roadway construction as well as some of the stormwater detention, and then kind of the central, that core area for any potential, the area where the future band shell or whatever pavilion will go. They've kind of done some mass grading in that area as well, too.
How much is the phase one? We're talking neighborhood of $5 million.
It'll probably be about 4.5 to 5 in that range. There's another phase that's going to be bid out along the north section of the site for stormwater detention. That'll be bid out probably in late February or March. Both those items are what Mike just mentioned, as well as that stormwater detention that are currently in our budget now. And then the discussion that soon to be had is the design for the amenities based on the PRI report, and then what the board would like to focus on. There's certain items that can be designed, bid, and constructed by this fall. There's other items such as the amphitheater that will take longer to design and a little bit more input on kind of the level of what the board is interested in. And then it all is going to depend on timing of that design and then whatever the board determines for budgeting.
And one thing, just to kind of follow up on what the village manager had mentioned, that section that's going to be bid out this year for the stormwater drainage, the village did get a $319 grant from the EPA, which will cover a little more than half of those costs.
Great. And so the ring road is essentially status today. The curbs are in, fire hydrants are in, and not paved. Curbs are in. It's not a paved ring road. It's not a paved west parking lot, but that's all in process. And we still think we're looking at end of June is the target on that.
Correct.
Okay. The one thing I'd say is I walked out there this weekend to go kind of just walk the road. And what's always hard for me, and I think this is an important part of this, what's hard for me is I look at a 8.5 by 11, 100-acre plot of land, is to appreciate just the size of this. And when you walk out to that ring road and you get to the northern tip of that ring road, and you look back at the village hall, it's big. I mean, there is a lot of land out here, and this is going to be, I think as we've said all along, this is going to be a phenomenal thing for this town. But it is just getting a sense of, now that as you start to see the curbs in, you can walk the road in and you see it and you look back and you look at the size of the parking lot, it's a lot of land even within the village green or the open play. I mean, it is a really, really big space. And I think at times it takes going out there. And so that's the one thing I would say is that I hadn't been out there since that construction, but I think it would be good for Parks Committee and others to start getting it. I know for myself, I need to visualize it. Right, looking at the paper is one thing. Getting out there and visualizing it. And I went out there with my kids this weekend, and as we walked, I'm telling them, hey, you got to turn this way, and this is where this is planned, and that's planned, and we face this way. And there's an energy to it. That something we've talked about for years is now starting to come to fruition, and you're starting to see it. It's a start Phase one, as I said, isn't sexy. It's all the stuff that needs to be done, that, you know, there's a ring road. But phase one will also include, I just want to make sure of this, phase one will also include sort of the main trail out around the property. And I think that was important for us to say, hey, when we talk about end of June and phase one is complete, okay, right, you got a ring road. Well, part of that was making sure that you can start getting out around the full, you know, piece of property and start getting out to different corners, whether you're for a walk or with your kids on a bike or whatever it is. So I think that part of it was rolled into this to say, look, we know phase one isn't sexy, but let's make the path part of it so we can start at the end of June getting out and around. And I think even that process alone will be great for people to start seeing what this is going to be in their own minds for residents. And there won't be fancy amenities yet, but I think it's moving along, and I think it's been a big investment from us, and it's in the neighborhood of $5 million so far on the necessities of what it takes before you can, with that foundation analogy, before you build a house. And so I think as this phase completes, we're not ready to build a house. And now let's start talking about the individual rooms and where we want to prioritize what those are going to be, right? That's the way, I know it's a simplified version, that's the way it works best in my head of trying to think through this project. And so on that topic, why I think it's been important timing-wise is, I agree, we have time on lots of this stuff to plan out and figure out how we're going to fund it, because that's obviously the most important thing. But in the meantime, we do have, for next fiscal year, and again, I think this kind of that getting ahead of it, we do have for next fiscal year, and I'll let John talk about that a little bit, of a roundabout number that we think right now we have to start looking at a design of a phase two. Is that correct?
Yes. The Park and Recreation Fund could handle $3 million of capital work or park improvements out there. And that includes the $5 million that has already been budgeted for the infrastructure and the roads and everything. So $3 million is a comfortable number. That would be funds that the village has. They wouldn't have to go out to debt for it.
Okay. Can you just talk a little bit about what builds into that $3 million? Is that taking our motor fuel, local motor fuel revenue?
No,
so
actually,
touch that. Okay.
The road that's being worked on now out there is funded by motor fuel tax funds. So any
by the MFT. I meant the local.
Gas. Yeah. Right now, a very small amount of the local MFT is being applied towards that $5 million because we're trying to tag it. The road is a qualified MFT, state MFT expense, which we have a lot of available. So we tagged it towards that this year. A small amount was from the park fund, which is the local MFT. So for fiscal 19, the $3 million of funds available for it are the surplus from the local MFT, from park contributions. It's from all of the general fund transfers over the past 10 years, or five to 10 years. That's where the funds are coming from.
Does it use any of the surplus that's going to be projected to be in Parks and Rec at the end of this year, this fiscal year? Is that part of?
No, the fund balance at the end of 19 and 20 is maybe 3.6 million. So we said 3 million would be a conservative amount to apply towards building out some park improvements. Okay. It does forecast operating surpluses. So that's why I thought it would be comfortable with 3.
Okay.
Of course, you know, when you start to build it and add all these other things, there is an extra cost.
Okay.
Just to make it all happen.
Yeah. And so if we're saying conservatively, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million for a phase 2 cash, right? This is not borrowing money, this is cash to look at a phase 2. And I think the question is, 1, what do we want to focus on for phase 2? And 2, and I think this is important also, is the timing of it, in which I'm going out of bid. And we are already in a position where bids are going right now for lots of these types of projects. And so if we could decide on where we want to go and then engage that design process now, that's going to put us on the fastest timeline, I think. Right? Don't want to rush anything and do it wrong. It's going to put us on the fastest timeline to, one, get the best price when we go out to bid, so we're not going out to bid in the middle of June, and two, which comes with that, and we've seen this ourselves at times, which comes with that is you're also then probably not getting the cream of the crop contractor when you're getting the contractors that are either willing to squeeze it into what they already have planned for the season, and there's going to be a premium to pay with that, or two, union contractors that really don't have the work, and there's maybe a premium. So I just think let's decide on where we're going to go on phase 2 with a budget of $3 million, and then let's go on that, as I've said, on the project as a whole, as reasonably quick as we can, not rushing, not making mistakes along the way. But I think every day matters right now to a bid on phase 2 on whatever we decide. And I truly think it's every day matters for those reasons.
In phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4, if it goes to phase 4, they are going to overlap. They have to overlap. We can't wait for one to be done to the other one to be done. It's just like when you're building your house. You don't wait for all of the framing to be up before you go to order the drywall. Everything has to keep moving along, so I think that's important. With that being said, though, I'm proud of how far we've come. I'm proud of the money that we've spent so far. We've done it in a timely manner, but we need to continue doing that. So I think that where we're at now is, okay, phase 2, what do we want to see? Because I want to see people out there next year. Whether it's on a sled card, whether it's on active play, whether it's doing the disc golf, whether it's in an open field with the nets. I want to see people out there at some point next year, so where do we need to go to do that? And I guess that would lead us to our discussion points on the architectural design options, right? That's where we're at. So we have a master agreement, architectural agreement with TRIA, and the TRIA was intricate in helping us with this village hall. Was a wonderful company to work for, very reasonably priced. We have the contract, we're ready to go with them. I would ask for a consensus that we hire TRIA to come up with a master plan for the whole park, but with a focus on what do we want to see in 2018. So we need the whole thing done, and then we need this small section done in one big bang, so that we can keep going on. And we're not having this discussion once phase 2 is at 45% done. We're moving along.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Sawyers, if we were to spend the $3 million this year, and I agree with what Trustee Rogers is saying, that we need to keep this in motion, but will we have enough time in between these, if we try to overlap them, to build up funds to continue to pay out cash? Or will we hit a point where we'll have to issue debt anyhow? And if that's the case, do we want to start looking at that right now, taking our $3 million, issuing some debt, doing a much bigger dive right now? I mean, if we're going to get to a point sooner rather than later where we have to issue some debt.
If you stay within a $3 million guideline for this phase, it won't impact the Park and Recreation Fund operations. They'll have a sufficient surplus to pay their bills. They'll have sufficient inflow of funds to do that. Eventually, we have a lot of dynamics with the bond issue because it's got a call feature in 19. It's our home rule sales tax is obligated to it. There's a lot of different things that can go on with phase 3 and phase 4 that would assist with funding. So it's hard to say because there's a lot of things that can happen between now and then. But if the $3 million the village could do and not incur debt.
Would we have another $3 million next year, though, to replace that? Is
No,
what I'm saying.
no, we wouldn't.
Or in 18
But
months.
when you get into 19 and 20 is when things could change different significantly because of the bond issue and the home rule sales tax.
So
Okay,
we would be reissuing the debt from the bond if we wanted to.
Well, all of the home rule sales tax is obligated towards the debt service. And that's $2.6 million of home rule sales tax to pay $2 million of bond payments. So when the bonds go away, you're going to free up a lot of money to do big endeavors, whether that's to service new debt down the line or just to pay for phases and things like that. So, you know, you could take it on. So in answer to your question, the $3 million is not a problem. If we did $3 million the next year, that would be a funding issue, and you'd probably have to take out debt.
Or restructure our current debt, like you're saying. And
well, they just abolished these advanced refunding, so we can't refund the existing debt until December 1st of 19. So it kind of falls in that line where you could piggyback some new debt.
So maybe
pay out
this
the old
next
debt.
phase, this could still be constrained by the $3 million we have, but maybe our phase after this one can be possibly a little bit bigger than the $3 million phase again.
Yes.
We'd have more options.
You would, yes, you would.
You would have more options, but you still have to find a funding mechanism to make sure that the money's coming back in as we're putting it back out. Because I don't want to incur more debt with the home rule sales tax we have right now, and you have nothing.
No, it's pledged right now.
I understand it's pledged to it, but if we go and dip back into it and take more money out of it without a funding mechanism on the back end and pay it off, we run into the jam. And we are going to use $3 million this year to be able to get this park moving on it.
Yeah, when the village manager and I met with some business analysts for bond companies, and we had talked about, you know, what we were comfortable doing. And we're too young to commit all of our revenue towards debt. So we never were in favor of that. We would recommend, and we both recommended, that we would cap out $1 million of home rule sales tax going forward. Just too early, too many big things that can happen in the next decade that you'll need funding for.
Just on that topic real quick, I want to make sure that I understand it. So we've got existing bond from 2012. We're finished with that bond in 2022 on today's schedule.
That's correct.
We're putting $2 million a year towards paying that bond on an annual basis, right? And so what you're saying is that potential, as we talk about, and I think as we talk about going forward and discussing ways to pay for additional phases, one of those potentials would be you look at when that's callable in December of 19. You could upfront pay that almost, again, I'm going to simplify it to my terms. It's almost like a cash out refi,
Yes.
right, on a home.
Exactly.
So we can refinance at a better rate than what we established in 2012, capture some additional on top of that to the tune of, and if I remember the number, it was if we did it over 15 years and extended it to 2032, you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 million, 7.5 to 8 million additional.
That's correct.
And if we do it over 10 years and ended in 27, right. But over 10 years, we could probably access maybe 4.5, right? But the key to this is, and I think that's the important part of staying somewhat conservative in our financial philosophy, is we don't know what the future holds with retail. We're dependent on sales tax. We don't have a municipal tax. And so to continue into 10 years from now at that $2 million a year clip would be somewhat risky,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So the plan would be maintain till 2022 our $2 million that we're doing, and then drop it to $1 million, and then decide whether that's for an additional 5 or an additional 10 years. It's 5, 4.5 million. If it's 10, we're at somewhere in the neighborhood of 7.5 to 8, right? Those are options, conservative options of still playing safe with our dollars and not overextending ourselves, not knowing what the future looks like.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
And so to your point, Trustee Gray, while we have cash, I think I like to spend cash and not go into debt when we don't have to. So I think that gets us going on phase 2. But at the same time, I think as we roll into phase 2 and design and determine what that is, well, let's start having that next conversation now about next phases and potential funding sources and how we pay for it. Because we all agree we don't have the cash to do it after the phase 2, right?
Right.
Or if we did, it would be any number of years in the future to do this at, $800,000 a year sort of thing off the gas tax or what have you. So, so on that one, I'd like to spend cash right now while we have it, but not stop in that next conversation.
And I agree, I think with Trustee Rogers, that we need to get somebody on board to prioritize, along with our thoughts, the next phase and the 3 phases that come after that. Whether we're doing them right out of the gate or not, they can always be changed.
Should be a total of 3 phases.
But you know what I'm saying, the numeric phases that come after that. And Mayor, while I agree with you, we want to be conservative as we can on a lot of things. We already took on an undertaking, 103 acres that we have to develop at some point, so regardless, we got to pay for it. So, we already bought in. You can't change that at this point, so.
No, you're right. You're right. But you also got to remember,
we got to be conservative.
We have to be conservative because we're not a village that's been for 50, 60 years.
And we don't have.
We're still pretty new, and I think we've done wonderful with what we have. I just don't want to become paper rich and cash poor.
No, but I always say think big because you gotta think big, and then you accomplish what you can
because
do.
otherwise you'll never get to that point. But that's why we're putting on TRIA to.
That's why I agree. I would like to get somebody to manage that process.
And then one last point is if that's how we do it, is do it by cash, and as it comes in on an annual basis, in my world, the secondary decision you have to make is what's that phase factor over time, because every year the price of materials is going up, and what's that versus borrowing to do it in today's dollars. And that's another discussion that isn't something we have to have tonight, but I think is one of those that we're talking, let's go phase 2 and let's get this thing out to bid of whatever we're going to agree to go out to bid on phase 2. And then let's not stop, let's not pause, let's roll into those conversations.
But one last point, and that's what I think someone like a TRIA can really come in handy, or someone of that nature. We have a potential to lock in pricing with contractors in future phases. They'll consider it if it's not too far out.
They'll consider it.
They're not going to tell you they're going to hold a price for 5 years, but you can lock in phases of work.
Well, I agree with what's being said, and I like the idea of let's get a price for the whole package and let's see what it is. And then you can dial back and figure out what we can and what we can't do.
So I'm clear, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So we are directing Manager Mertens to move forward with TRIA in a design services schedule beginning in February. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, with that being said, what are we going to tell them to design? Because that's where we're at now,
Well,
right?
that's where we need to sit down with him and
Well, that's why we're.
Well, I have a comment, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Well, instead of, because we don't know, the park is almost like an evolving, you can't, and I don't want them to just, I would rather go out to bid on, pick out a phase 2 now. We have $3 million, the active core is at 2.5, 2.6. Do that, and that way people go out to the park, they're gonna see some activity, things going on, and then see what happens in the other phases. Start that now, but then maybe go out to bid on the others, just to make sure we're sharpening our pencil. That space.
I think for the architectural design, that would be like saying,
No.
right, so all we're talking about here today is having TRIA put together a plan for this, and the 2.6, remember, this is
PRIs.
Right, it's a PRI.
I'm just saying a plan for this. We're not getting them involved in the
Yeah,
whole thing right now.
Yeah.
Just this.
I don't think we are, we need to, because you can't, I don't think you design, again, I'm gonna simplify in my own
That's
head.
what's going
You don't design a house and bring in architects for your kitchen, and a different architect for your bathroom, and a different architect for your master bedroom, and hope that it all comes together at the end, and so I think this is one project, and I think we can look at it as phases within components of it, but to think this isn't one project that all comes together somehow, whether it's the utilities or what, and that is the efficiency of having one person lay out the plan for the
I
park.
understand that.
Okay.
How do we know we're getting the best value for our money? I understand that.
In what regard?
Well, costing.
Let me, Mayor, if you don't mind, maybe Eric can opine on this. Professional service contracts are really based on qualifications and skills, not price.
Well, it's all part of the package, you would think.
Correct.
No, it's two different things. Qualifications and an RFP, so we're just saying he's qualified to go out and bid this out, and that's the program where we're at.
And you know you're not going to get the bids that were thrown at us. Bids will not be what's on the papers right now.
Okay, all right. Well, my thought,
Exactly.
my thought with TRIA is I think TRIA knows us well enough as a village. I think they know us well enough from a spend perspective. I think they know us well enough not to present us some grand plan that is not feasible. So in my mind, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't give them an opportunity to at least budget it out and let us know.
And there, I agree, and Sherman, and your thoughts, I understand what you're talking about, but I would like to see what the whole package is going to run us, of what we're going to.
But broken down, so you know.
Yes.
Right,
Not
pretty much.
not these prices.
No, but I mean, if you look at this and then you see how the prices are on it, now we're going to break it down, so this is Homer Glen, and this is.
Now, Mayor, one point on the PRI prices to keep in mind is, I think since we've gotten this plan from PRI, we've all, and I've been guilty of this, we've all said, oh, these prices are just insane. And so it's going to be something lower than that. And we've all said that. I think two things on that. I think judging by phase one, they weren't, maybe they were under a little bit, not over, right on phase one, okay? So I'm saying there may be some areas where we were right and these prices are, off kilter. But there may be other areas we may be surprised. I think part of the process of engaging someone like TRIA now is they can go and cost estimate these to a more comfortable number, and whether it's higher or lower. Now we're making decisions based off of what we think are more reliable numbers than numbers we're all saying, really are.
Well, that's pretty much what I'm looking at is I want something that's realistic and prices where we're at right now, what we're going to be doing, because like I said, when they came up, you got to admit, when they came up with a band shelter of what, $2.4 billion? Give me a break.
But let me, I'm not really defending the PRI, but I'm saying as they go through that process, I'd rather them overestimate than put in 500,000 or 200,000, whatever your number is, and then we're going back and saying, well, that's what we planned off of. So if they were going to go overboard on something, I'd rather them go high, because that to me would be part of a potential phase 3 discussion of, we've all talked about that. What do we really want to see and what are realistic costs? Is it 2.2 million? I don't think so. But that it's on that paper is to me not something to start, well, the amphitheater's not happening, it's 2.2 million, right? I think that's a number on a piece of paper.
And that's exactly what it is, and TRIA will bring in a number that's a reasonable number.
With our input on what we all
Correct,
like to
of
see.
what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So no pressure though. Jim knows, there's going to be a lot of pressure.
What are you going to do with that?
So, I mean, sure, the whole thing is if we don't get an idea of what we're looking at to spend, we'll never be able to finish this thing.
Can I ask a question? Do we know a cost of what it's going to, do we have a cost of what it's going to cost us to spend? Like, do we have like a,
Of what TRIA would become?
yeah, like, do we have a price of them to go out to say this is what everything's going to cost? Do we have an idea of what that's going to cost us?
Trustee, what I would suggest is that we work with TRIA on, I think somebody made somewhat of a suggestion, what can be designed and constructed this year, around a $3 million range, along with a larger plan, and get a task list with a pricing component for that design and bring that back to the village board. And I'd like to just remind people that this was done a number of years ago, but the village did go out for requests for qualifications. They did interview a number of architectural firms. The village did select TRIA on a different projects. We do have a master architect plan that does have set fees depending on the scope of the project, as well as a set percentage, which is pretty typical. So we did go through all of those public processes. And the village is not obligated to use TRIA, but there is definitely an opportunity cost for us to consider moving forward with someone sooner rather than later. But I would definitely propose bringing a scope of work back to the board, so the board is aware of the design for, whatever these items is projected at X, Y, and Z prior to us moving forward with formal authorization.
Well, what I was asking, is there a cost to the scope of work?
Correct.
And do we know what that is?
That would have to be put together.
Right. He'll have to break it down to what he is going to charge for what we're looking for. That's when you're going to get all the questions from him of what are we looking for.
We have a contract that's set, that already been negotiated as part of the village hall. So that contract is set, and that went, and to get to TRIA, there was the to Mike's point, there was the RFQ process we went through. And the standard services agreement is a very typical thing. There's nothing out of the ordinary here. This is a very, very standard thing when you have a standard services agreement for professional services like a law firm and other things. So, and I would say, with regards to TRIA has done one project for us so far. And we're sitting in it, and part of that redesign that they came in and we engaged them on, I think, by all estimates, conservatively, saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars and got us in here months ahead of the original schedule, which saved us $20,000 a month in lease. So the one project that they've done for us, I think, by all accounts, has been a success. And so, and the secondary point is, because they've been involved and because they know the village hall portion, they were also involved, I think, PRI engaged them, not us, but PRI engaged them on this plan, so they're already familiar with the plan. And so the cost side of it is in the contract, depending on what the project amounts to.
I mean, I'm all for going with TRIA, and I believe that was consensus of the Parks Committee too, is moving forward with the contractor that we have currently, coming up with a master plan and so forth. I just wanted to know if we had price, how much that was going to be.
We will get that, we will know. And to put on the back of what Trustee Varian said, we dealt with a different firm for architectural before we hired TRIA. Night and day difference. They listened to everything that we said. They worked with us on a price. They allowed us to find things that were more cost effective than what was put out there. And at the end of the day, you felt very comfortable with every meeting you had with them, which they had, I wouldn't say overkill on meetings, but there were times where we were here 3-4 times a week going over things just to make sure that they were being done just the way we wanted to. And what Trustee Barry said, at the end of the day, we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we got in here, I would say, at least 7-8 months faster than what the other company was even guessing at the time. And architectural price, TRIA was about half.
Also, hopefully Mike was able to answer the question as well, but I think what's going to happen is the board will get a contract or for a task order that says, we're hiring TRIA for this amount to do these things, to proposing to do these phase 1 and continue on. But there will be, what's going to come before the board, your question is how much will this cost to decide how much we're going to spend? That's going to come before the board. Is that right, Mike?
Correct. There might be some time and materials to work out that, but that's minuscule. The real design is depending on what the board wants to do long term.
And then after we get those questions answered from TRIA, we hope we may be able to, looking at these prices that are on here and knowing that these are what we consider inflated prices from PRI, maybe we'll be able to do 2 of these color-coded items in here with our $3 million and maybe our $3 million plus a little, if Brian's got some pocket change kicking around. But I mean, if we're at 2.6, obviously right now, looking at this, it's like, well, we can really only do one of them if we're going to try to stay within our 3, if we went with these prices. But if we can't find some savings, maybe we can do 2 of these.
Right, or pull some things that, like I was saying, I'd like to see the grade, some grade in
Right.
some other areas.
Right, because you want to see activity out there, and
Right.
we can't have dozers and everything torn up.
That's
but-
sort of what we did in phase 1 too, because wasn't phase 1 price so high, and then we threw in some other things to.
We did expand phase 1 a little bit to include additional road work and additional electrical utilities, some grading, things of that nature, so.
So then I guess I just would like to hear from Tria to see if you guys, yes? You know, are we clear as mud up here?
That's great. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I think everyone touched on every little portion that we talked about. So we went with Mike, and Trustee Green, Trustee Rogers about the tons of options that you can break this out into little small pieces. You can just do the fishing pier once 1 year, and you can break out just a tennis court the next year, or you can just do it all the next year. The plan is, we were talking about, is for us to give enough information to the board so you can make a logical decision, is to sit there and say, what are the actual costs, that were there? So confirm the costs that we have on this plan. Put them in a logical order where we can get certain things done in certain time frames. We may group things that are there. I mean, I know they're phased there right now. But then really working with finance portion of this and saying, hey, Jim, we only have $1 million every year to do this. And the decisions will be made, hey, we can do a project every 2 years, or we can use that and bond it, we can do whatever it is, or Jim, we want to do it all in the first year, or we're going to do it every 5 years. But what we were trying to do is, what I even here in the village hall, right? Every step we took, we want to make sure that we didn't have to take a step back. We weren't painting ourselves on the corner. So we asked about the future uses of this room that you're sitting in, right? If we're here, we're making dirt and we're digging this up, do we want to add certain amenities and stuff here? It's that process that makes everyone think and brings it to the park board to say, got it, I'm a park committee, I should say, okay, while we're doing this, we need to run sewer lines out, drainage lines out. That's going to cross a road or not cross a road. So before we put in the snow hill, what do we have to do? So kind of putting each step logical order and then making them progressive and showing that cash flow all the way out and saying, this is what you can spend. Here's the increase in terms of costs, right? Because every year is 3 to 6% increase in materials. I asked the board and everyone to keep in mind that the best time to bid things out, November, December, and January. So if you work on those guidelines, this first project, I think that's the one that's saying, we're in a hurry because the best time to use this park is in the summer. So if you've got two kind of dead ends there and you're trying to back out when you can do things, when you have the design time and be able to bid it, get it out, get any long lead items, so forth, and get things built as soon as possible in the spring so that people can use it during the summer. So it's a lot of kind of planning this out, working with the financial portion of it, working with the construction side of it, confirming construction costs, and saying, here's the master plan, and this is how we can attain the entire park. And that may be 1 year or 15 years. That's your call. But it's just being able to facilitate and give you enough information you can make logical decisions.
Can I just tap into something you said, and I totally agree. We've got to remember this is a long park, it's a big park. We've got to make sure we're stubbed in with all the utilities we need in every aspect of every future use we may consider. Because if we miss that opportunity while the ground is dug up, we got to rip out concrete, we got to rip out asphalt, and we got to redo it from scratch. So that's got to be thought out, well thought out, from this village hall to the back fence.
And one of those options you brought up is just saying, we design this entire park as one, and we phase that out. You say, we know we can pay X amount each year, but each fiscal year is going to be different. We can work with contractors and say, what is your price now for this entire project? We're going to break it up into 3 phases. I don't want you to start until after May 1st each year. It's a 3-year project. We're working on a lot of projects right now that are 2-year projects, right? Because there's schools and they can only do so much during the summer. They're saying you're doing half the project this summer, the other half finishing it the next summer. But at the end of it, you're gonna be nice and clean, each summer. So it's working that out. And contractors will put an escalation. It's not like you're gonna get today's prices. They're gonna try to estimate where prices are and fuels are gonna be. But you're gonna have very high competition to get a project that's gonna keep a company busy for 2 to 3 years at one instance, as opposed to each year. Those are all decisions what you'll have to make when we go through it, and those are the things that I want to present with you and work with staff and making these numbers work and phasing this logically so you can have people use it each year, but also not be under construction every summer so that nobody can get to the park. Try to phase them early, get them done early or late, however it may be, so that people can use the park during the summer, which is also the same best construction period, so it's tight. So we're going to make that all work.
How is that going to be interfaced with the Fest? How will you interface this? Now, the Fest happens every June, but this is not supposed to happen in 2019. Can't have construction and people trampling on brand new grass.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to have issues before and after that if it's going to be on this property.
The section of the property that we plan on using for the fest in that front west area, our goal is to use it for 2019. If that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We've already put the highway commission on notice, or highway department. Our goal is to eventually have it here sooner rather than later. But to me, it's more important to give a big amenity to the entire community in getting most of the phases done that we can in the park before a festival that we feel is successful, but it's not the only thing we do. So I think we would work well with whatever construction plan is put in place.
And the logic between that, Sharon, is the active core was the easiest one to break off with the dollars that were amount and get that done with the least amount of discussion and saying this would take us 3 months to design it and go through meetings and so forth. The center area, the green, I'm envisioning there's going to be a lot more discussion on that, and that would be one of those things that should happen, should start now also, and it's happening at the same time we're doing that active core. We're talking about the other phases and making key decisions there. What do you want it to look like? How big, how small, how whatever it is. And so you can start planning that out, because if you need to go out to bid, again, you want to be out to bid this November, December, January.
And correct me if I'm wrong, just one more comment to your question. It's a ring road. So if we do something on that side of the building, there's still access on another side. So there's a way to get construction traffic in and out. We have to close roads down. So I think it's feasible. We talked about that at the last festival too.
And the festival still contained. It's not like
It's
the
contained.
whole park, so it's doable.
I mean, I think construction traffic can travel on.
It's all about traffic, people coming in, it's construction traffic that's coming around, trying to phase around that. Those are all decisions that we need to bring up because that's going to be part of your phasing. If that is do or die, you need to be in there in 2020, we've got to work backwards. And you're right about the grass. We did a Country Club Hills amphitheater and they rolled out grass literally 24 hours before the show. And they were trying to sprinkler it, it's in the middle of summer, and they got trampled, and they were replacing a lot of it, right? So it was beautiful, they had a timeline to hit, but they knew that. Those are decisions that they made ahead of time. So these are things that if we can avoid them, let's avoid them, let's move. I'll bring all those to the table.
Did the park committee weigh in on what they like to see prioritized as a phase 2?
Not on what they would like to see as phase 2. Some people did mention the yellow area.
Yeah.
They did say that they would like to move forward. Mike, you had like a whole written consensus because everyone was kind of like all over the place and going back and forth, but I think it was to move forward with TRIA.
Correct. They wish to move forward with the TRIA master contract to get design and what we can plan for this budget. We did talk about a $3 million kind of concept. We talked about the active core being the first area. There was some discussion about trying to look into the village green area, if there were some amenities out of the village green area, not the amphitheater component, but some other amenities that might be able to incorporate so you can maybe expand the usage of the park in different areas. And I believe there might have been a second phase depending on how budget was allocated.
I believe disc golf was included in that.
Yes, disc golf would be a kind of a quick hit for that west portion. You could start putting people in different areas of the park and different activities for different types of age groups.
Sledding hill, because we'll be done with a lot of the dirt that they're dumping over there, so we can, I think when I met with Jim, one of my concerns was making sure that he's dumping the dirt for the sledding hill, right? But we have to create a sledding hill. So that's why I said we need to get Tree involved soon too, because you can't dump it and then all of a sudden our playground's flooding every spring because it's not graded right. So I would like to see the sledding hill done as part of the second phase as well with the active play and disc golf.
Yeah, but it's, we don't have the money to do any type of road to it, because they said that was gonna cost millions.
Right, no, I
So
understand.
it'd just be a hill.
Right. You're gonna get your workout in.
Sure, you would have, there will be a
Next year.
1 mile walking path going around the park, so there will be a path that theoretically would get close to it, so there would be access to it. Obviously, you would have to walk. It's still a nice hike for some young people. Maybe cross-country skis.
This is like when I just picture like the dad pulling the kid on the sled and then the dad sees them who's like, I'm too tired.
George, I can excuse myself for just a few minutes.
You do what?
I can excuse myself for just a few minutes.
All right, so we've already determined, there's a consensus that Tria is who we want to sit down with. So at that point, that's when you should have all our questions for him, so at least we get an idea of prices on this.
Can we just clarify that process a little bit? I think a little bit confused on that. Jim, if we said, we want to move forward, talk me through like the immediate timeline. What would be next steps?
I would work with Mike on figuring out the scope and just saying we can identify anything. So we have a master contract that's there. It's dormant until you activate it with a project authorization for any specific project. This City Hall was a specific one. EMA building was a separate one. So this is, and that one's what we're working on currently. So this would be no different. The next two phases here would just be, here's a project authorization to move forward. In the meantime, we already worked with you guys in getting that going and having some ideas. So if it does need to come to the next board meeting for approval, we can have some ideas and have some discussions already. I've already had a ton of discussions already about this here. We haven't been hired, but and getting this going so we can hit the ground running and have these.
So that would be my follow-up question then, is because I believe every day matters right now in getting this out to a bid. Does this take board action to do that? And I don't believe that's the case, but I think we're just, maybe that's what we do, but I think that's a discussion point.
Sure, I can talk to the attorney. It does not take board action because the board already authorized the master contract. My advice, though, would be initially do a time and material for the next number of weeks, and then bring back the full task list to the board, so the board can just reauthorize it in a public setting, just as an extra step.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my sensitivity is just every day counts right now, and if this is the direction we're going to go, let's not be missing any days, because I think there's a premium on the back end for every day.
Having an authorized signed proposal wouldn't stop us from already working with you anyway. So that's, we have the confidence of the board here. We'll start working tomorrow. So.
Okay. Are we saying active core? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yellow.
Yeah, the yellow.
I think yellow, but I think Jim should give us his input too as to what he thinks next phases are.
Well, the deal was two at the same time, right?
Yeah, he knows the numbers. So obviously, that correlates it within that 3 million that we have, whereas the others, I think I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think the active core is what's going to get the community out here and be able to start appreciating this park that's been sitting here for 4 or 5 years. And
I agree with Beth, but I think what Carla was trying to say is, well, like you said, the sledding hill and making sure it doesn't flood. I think that's where your input is going to be important.
Give us the low-hanging fruit. We'll take care of those things, but we make a decision. I wasn't saying Jim decides. I said Jim can give us some recommendations as to where we can go with it.
I think the ideal route would be two lanes here. One is that yellow area, get started on that going right away. The other one at the same time, so we're not waiting till the end. I don't know who mentioned it, like, don't wait till you finish that one till you start the next. The second part of this, I don't know what phases we're talking about now. So if we said the yellow's phase 3, or is it phase 2? 2. Yellow's phase 2, work on phase 3, which looks at the entire rest of the park, that we can come back to you and say, it's there, what do you want to do? You know, so in a couple months, we can start talking about what do you want to be out to bid in November, in December, and January. And that's, by that time, you'll be talking more dollars and cents, more everything, and making those decisions.
But that's also phase 3 that you're talking about for next November.
Or
we can do
this November.
phase 2 right now, we can get this.
Phase 2 right now, get out to bid ASAP as soon as we can, make some quick decisions with everyone. Active core, I mean, it's tennis courts, right, some of the active things. Most of the decisions are going to be like color and some of the materials, so hopefully that doesn't, I know that won't take long. The other ones, at the same time, parallel path and just get it going, and then you can make your decisions. Because if you do need to get something, we'll be ready for November, December, January.
And again, I'd just like to reiterate that, you know, if active core comes in under what we're currently looking at, there may be some other money there, and I'd like to know what smaller portions of some of these other things can we start doing. I mean, personally, I'd like to see something starting outside these windows. I think this is kind of an eyesore, and we'll continue to let this be like this. And we're going to invite people over for the tree lighting ceremony, which is going to happen right here. Everything's basically coming in the front door and going through, filtering through this to get through there. So if we have some money and we can phase some of what's outside this wall, you know, with the just the area in general. I'm not talking about the whole, you know, multi-million-dollar scope of this portion of it. But that's what I'm saying is, if the yellow portion comes in significantly under, and there's enough to get a nice bump on this red portion and get some, you know, real benefit out of that, I'd like to see that personally. So,
without speaking for everybody, I'm going to say we should set goals. Usability is one of them, and cost feasibility is probably the other.
Yeah, good thing is going to happen. I mean, between price and what's going to be the biggest effect for the community and the quality of life here. So we can make those decisions. Phase 3 can be the entire park, or you back off and just say, I just want to do the Christmas tree lighting area. That's it. Those are going to be decisions you'll have to make at the next phase. But I'll bring all of phase 3 with all the pricing and how you can break that out and what's the logical steps in doing it. I wouldn't have a contractor do the fishing pier, the Christmas tree, and all over site. Try to combine them, make the mess once in that area, restore it, and let it sit and seed and restore. So that's the goal.
I would say at the active core, when you do the math on this, when you just add up the different features, and again, we're using PRI numbers, that's almost 1.7 million. And on that, when we talk about the timing of this and you know, the phasing factor potentially at 15%, you're talking about $250,000 just on this one phase, just on this one portion. That's the savings that has to be part of this discussion about how quickly we want to do this. Or are we willing to pay that phasing premium, whether it's 10, 15, whatever that number is. But in this portion alone, that's $250,000 on just not doing it last year versus doing it this year. And then you do that out in the future and you start looking at some of the bigger numbers. And I think that's an important point for us. The design and construction contingency, that's 25%. That may be a bit high. We don't have an existing building like we have here. We don't have enough walls and we're doing things. Could you find something out there? Sure, you could find something. There was a golf course. So the 25% is probably a bit high, is my guess. But the last point is, when you look at this, the 12% for architectural engineering, our agreement is nowhere near that with TRIA. So there's going to be a savings on that line item. Right. And so the faster we get into this process and start getting more hard figures, the more educated decisions we're going to be able to make.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
Then,
do we need a formal consensus?
is there any
I think I understand this one.
All right, is there,
Wait, relative to old business, I just wanted to circle back to the cell tower because I just want to make sure that that people understood what happened here today, that we did not vote on this because we don't even know what we're voting on. The only thing that happened here today was, in my own opinion, was that it was sent back to planning committee so that everything, all of the points from A to Z can be covered and heard so we can make an educated decision. I don't want people to think that we left here approving any cell tower or not approving a cell tower. All we did was send it back to planning for further clarification.
Great. Mayor, one last point. I just know, we know how hard it is to have discussions when we can only have them one-on-one outside of this room. Just a quick question on, Sharon, I think you mentioned Goodings Grove Park grand opening.
Yes.
You mentioned July.
Yes.
Why are we looking at July and not April? That park is complete, right?
It was the grass. We had sodded over because we were doing, I think it was a sidewalk art. And we were talking to John Robinson. He suggested letting that, it won't be ready if we do it better in April, May.
Ready for grand opening or ready for use?
Ready for use because he said of all the sodding, he says it's going to be trampled if you get a lot of people out there.
Well, the grand opening event that we're having is a sidewalk, like painting, but where people are gonna come, they're not gonna use the sidewalks. They're gonna have to walk through the grass.
Right.
The grass will actually just be those seeds.
Gotcha.
Right. And he said June, there will be EMA, because we have to work around EMA schedule too. So he said June is a hectic month, so that he suggested July.
You mean facilities?
Right.
Yeah. Well, could we, just a suggestion, could we have a grand opening similar to like the one that Conos, you guys did a great job over at Evelyn's Gate with the, letting us use the trailer.
A lot of residents from Evelyn's Gate, and a couple we met the other day, everyone keeps asking if we're gonna do it again.
Yeah, could we do something like that in May, and then your July event could be called a chalk fest in July at this Gooding
We're
Grove
not
Park?
going to do two. We didn't want to do two. Okay, at the same park. Because we were going to bring something like that in July. It was going to be like a whole,
I guess
The Parks Committee to discuss it, doing it in May, but then again, John Robinson did brought up again, the grass still wouldn't be ready no matter which way you looked at it. He just didn't want to have to reseed it and,
right,
just
and what's the cost of it?
right.
Now you're going to have a big delay.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I just was wondering why it was July.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think we just have to make sure that we make the public aware that they can use the park before July.
People were out there already.
I think
The
we
park
just need
itself is
to
open.
do that. Yeah, I think we just need to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that the only old business? Anyone else has some old business? Have we got new business? Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against it? None? Please adjourn.